I did not realize that the Lakers had taken Bronny until Lakers fans started hitting me up. Like my friends that were Lakers fans were hitting me up. They were mortified by the idea that the Lakers had done this. Like it felt to them like being a clown move. Like it was people telling me like it's hard to be a Lakers fan when this kind of thing is going on. And it was with multiple people. And so I hadn't been paying any attention to really what the social media chatter or anything else was about it. I just looked at it like, I don't think we have anything to indicate that Bronny is an NBA player. I don't think we have anything to indicate that there was nothing to indicate that he gets drafted by that team in that position if his father is not LeBron James, who happens to play for the Lakers. Like, I don't even think there's really much argument about that at this point. There are two things. One, you can throw out whatever Bronny's stats were in college. I think it was like 4-point-something points a game and all of that stuff. Like, you can put all that out there. Okay. You can find other people that have averaged similar numbers and gotten drafted. I think Peyton Watson was at UCLA. He went in the draft and he got drafted in the first round with numbers about the same as Bronny. I get it. But Peyton Watson is not 6'1" and change. You have to be so cold to be 6'1" and change and do anything in the NBA. So cold. That is not terribly different than when you see a fat ass out there playing in the NBA. You know that dude has some special level of talent. Otherwise, why would your fat ass be out here? You know what I'm saying? Everything is working against you in the optics and everything else. So if you see some fat ass out there playing basketball, you know he got vision, he got quicks, he got something. Hops? Probably not. Conditioning? Yeah, but something. There is probably something. If you 6'1" and something, you gotta have it, man, because this league is not made for dudes that height, right? Like you can go through and count roster by roster how many people actually fit this size profile. If you are within that size profile and make it to the NBA, you have to absolutely be the jump off the screen guy. And I've never seen anything of Bronny James playing basketball that indicates that this is a dude that jumps off the screen. And I know this if for no other reason than if there were a wealth of evidence of Bronny jumping off the screen, we all would have seen it by now. They'd have been putting it in front of you at every turn. It just wasn't there. And so what I felt like I was watching with this thing with Bronny, and they got the cameras at the house and everything, it didn't sit right at all with me. Because, and like I'm working on some projects right now, like things I'll tell you about at a later point. But I'm working on a project, one that really centers on the idea of like kind of sports and belief and the reasons why we're into sports and the reasons why we dig it. But one of the most fundamental things about sports and the reasons that it resonates in the way it does is, man, this is absolutely about competition, right? There are always going to be some market inefficiencies and there's always going to be some forces at play in how sports goes to stop it from being just like a 100% meritocracy. But fundamentally, it comes down to you can play or you can't. Like I remember when I was doing Game Theories, the show I did on HBO for a couple of years, and we would take submissions from the writers about topical stories to get into. And this was when that story had come out. I forget what magazine it was, but it was where the term Nepo baby had kind of come out and had been coined. Somebody had submitted like maybe doing something with the Nepo babies as a story that we could do for the topical. And I always felt like I should, I felt like if I was going to tell people no, I wanted to do the best I could to explain to them why it was that I was saying no. And the explanation I gave for why I didn't want the Nepo baby story was I was like, yeah, you can make the argument about nepotism in all these different places in sports. Like we did a whole thing about nepotism in coaching, for example. But I was like, but on the court, you really ain't got to worry about it, or on the field, just because it just so fundamentally comes down to you can hoop or you can't. You know what I mean? Like that's where it's going to be. So you're not going to have the type of nepotism that you see in Hollywood or in a lot of other places, because the nature of it is just like, this is all about competition in a way that this could never happen. Except now the stars have aligned in such a unique way. And the unique way is the fact that LeBron James is still so good at basketball that he could have a son at an age that is reasonable for somebody to have a son, and that son be in a position to actually play at the same time as his father, right? Like, part of the Ken Griffey Jr., Ken Griffey Sr. story was that it required two things to happen. It required that Ken Griffey Sr. stick around the big leagues long enough, like I think he was in his early 40s at that point, but he needed to be there in his early 40s, and his son kind of needed to be good enough to get there when he was 19. And again, I believe he had that son at a time where people reasonably have kids, and it happened, right? But Ken Griffey Jr. was there for the Mariners because he was the coldest, okay? They went and got his daddy because they thought it might be cool, and they were sorry anyway, but he was the coldest. That was why they made that move. I don't think we had ever envisioned a situation or scenario where, just as a straight up favor and not even as a novelty act, it would look like a player could get his son on a team. Whoa, okay. So I'm gonna take it back to that draft night, because I sent off a tweet and I was just like, this is some clown shit. And I can't believe that the people on television or whatever are not calling this clown shit. And I got on the train. And while I'm on the train, I looked at my mentions. And buddy, I had infuriated quite a few people by ruining what they had determined was this feel-good story by saying that this was a clown move. And so, I think I forget sometimes that it ain't the old days on Twitter, and some people don't remember the old days of me on Twitter. But Sean, I don't even know if you remember this, because I don't know how far you go back to following me on Twitter, but I used to give it to people. Like, I used to, and I had a remarkable level of stamina, man. I could take on all comers. It was like a carnival act, man. Like, all of y'all, one at a time. We could all, like, boom, take one out, bring another one on. It looked like Double Dragon, man. Hit this one right here, hit that pipe, that lead pipe.
Who wants it?
I used to be ready for it, right? And I ain't really got it like that in me anymore. But I had people thinking I was crashing out, or like a little more upset about the idea than I think anybody actually recognized. What blew my mind was that the whole thing was being positioned as a feel-good narrative. And I couldn't really get that. And then I also admit it got to this thing that I often found very, very annoying, which is, all you dads out there, right, believe that you are somehow in a noble class, when in many cases you are only a dad because your reflexes are slow. Now, a lot of people would then came and make arguments, something around the idea of, well, that's because you're not a father, you don't understand. And that may be correct, by the way. There is certainly a level of the fatherly experience that I do not understand, because my reflexes are better than many of yours. I hear you. But I just want to, I made a point on Twitter that I've made on the show here, but I understand that it hit some of y'all in your sensitive little feelings. And Sean, and that is what I said. I just want to remind y'all that just because y'all are daddies doesn't mean you're actually any good at it.
And we talked about this earlier. You've said this on the show before, that line,
yes,
but many times,
yes,
but it just hit a bit differently
yes,
that day. And
yes,
the replies you got, I was like, are we on red alert here?
Woo! They was coming for me, dog. They wanted it, man. People were hot over saying this, right? Like, part of it is just like the people and whatever the affection is that they have for LeBron James. Part of it also is the way that people view their own selves in the context of fatherhood. I also realized, to be fair to people, that I don't think they really understand why it is that I think that taking Bronny and the way it all went was a clown move. Now, a point that I make or that I'll make in this that I think is important, because I don't like completely discount or dismiss the idea that being a father would give me a perspective that I don't have under these circumstances. I think that that's a fair point to make, but I absolutely have a perspective in this that most people cannot relate to just because of the nature of what the world is. And this is no shade to anybody else, but while you are looking at this in your ability to relate to it as a father, which means by definition, you are looking at it and relating to LeBron James. You, if you are finding this story so cool and your statement to me is about not knowing what it is to be a father, then that means that you think that this story is cool for LeBron James. Okay? And to me, that is a huge, important point that we need to stick on and put a pin in right now, right? If you think that existing in the position of being a father means that it gives you the perspective necessary to appreciate what the story is, it is because the person you are centering in this story is LeBron. Cool. What I can relate to is being the son of some somebodies, right? That is the part of this story that I know a lot better than most people ever will. Now, my parents are not the LeBron Jameses of their world necessarily, right? But like, I went to undergraduate school at Clark Atlanta University. The Department of Political Science at Clark Atlanta University is now named for my father, right? I went to University of Oklahoma, a couple months ago because they gave my mom an honorary degree there. Like, in various ways and in various places that I've trafficked in, people have known who my parents are, and my parents have been in a position to be like helpful to me. And sometimes they ain't even got to do it. All that matters is that people know that you got that connection, right? I know what it's like to be the son under those circumstances. Okay. And I'm gonna tell you something that I remember that my mother told me once, and this is just about kids in general. And it's a very important point. It's something that stuck with me, right? And before I tell you what the thing is, I just give you something to imagine in your head to use as like a little bit of a device. Is if you ever see it, like when a kid, before they even get to that point of like where they're learning to walk, like they just getting themselves to the point where they can stand themselves up on stuff, right? Because when you think about it, like little babies, man, they ain't really got nothing to do but just sit around all day on focus on like one thing. Like when you look at kids do like amazing and like why in the world did this 8-month-old manage to shimmy his way up this tree or whatever? You know what I'm saying? Like, or like figure out how to get all the way up there because they ain't got nothing else to do but to think about stuff. But anyway, you watch them and they'll like pick themselves up. And that first time that you see them and they get their hands on both sides of the table and they stand up and they're able to hold it steady, and you look at them and you can see that look of satisfaction, right? Like the look of satisfaction and pride that comes from, I did that, right? That's a really, really important like human impulse and feeling, right? And it explains the reasons and ways that a lot of people navigate and move through the world, to be able to look at themselves and be like, yo, man, I did that. And my mom said something, you can't be proud of something that you didn't earn. You just can't. And once you get it and you're not proud of it, it ain't gonna make you happy, man. And in fact, that kind of thing winds up being more haunting than anything else. And so when I saw that the Lakers had drafted Bronny, it actually made me think about Dwayne Wade, because Dwayne Wade's son, and this is important detail here. Dwayne Wade is a part owner of the Utah Jazz. And the Jazz drafted Dwayne's son in the first round of the G League draft. It was an obvious display of nepotism, but also a little bit different, right? Because the thing about nepotism, this is a bit more of a heavy-handed show of nepotism than you typically see, right? I'll give you an example of a world where nepotism is all over the place, and it is the world of talent agencies, okay? And if you go into mailroom of any talent agency, you are going to hear the last name of somebody who hires and fires at some company, okay? They're all in there, okay? But I just told you, they in the mail room. All right. Now, of course, the fuckers wind up getting on the other side of it, and they be out here like, I started in the mail room, right? Like they go a little bit too far in explaining how they got it out the mud. But at the very least, they was put into a situation where they had to at least go get it. Okay. What makes the thing with Bronny so strange, and I remember when it first happened, and I was like, okay, well, they took him in the second round, and I said to myself, I forget who I was talking to. It wasn't Vinny, I don't think. But I remember I said, and I was like, all right, so they took him in the second round. Okay. And he was like, whoever it was I was talking to was like, he's going to be on the team. I was like, no. They're like, he's going to be on the team. Like, if you had told me that they was just drafting him and then they was just going to send him to the G League, all right, I got you. But he's going to be on the team. At the very least, he's going to be on the team for the first couple of days. And that to me was just so wild. Because look, man, I'm sure that young man knows how good he is or how good he is not. I'm sure he knows that. And this can't feel good if you know you're not that good. And what you do is you put him in a situation to go out here and get cooked by all kinds of people who are probably better than him. Right? Because this is the position that he's probably not supposed to be in. Now, I've seen the argument that's been made, well, he can come to the Lakers and then the Lakers are in a position to help develop his talent. Number one, the Lakers have not demonstrated themselves to be a well-run organization. Number two, the Lakers are talking about trying to win a championship. Ain't nobody got no time to be out here playing with Bronny. Right? And number three, they have other places for you to get ready to play in the NBA. One of them is called college, where I am sure that young man would have been having the time of his life and maybe even getting better at basketball while getting those NIL checks. It could have been a pretty good world. So why are we doing this? Right? Why are we doing this? And again, I look at this from the standpoint of, I don't think we're talking about the situation that's set up for the young man's success or the young man's happiness, because you can't be proud of something that you didn't go get. You might be happy that you got it, but you can't be proud, right? And you certainly can't like it to have people question you all the time about your stuff. And that's what's going to happen in various forms of fashions, right? So why are we here? And it gets us back to LeBron. And one thing that we have all given LeBron a lot of credit for, at least I have, like especially, is like he showed up in the league like precocious on such a very interesting level and so prepared in so many ways that it's impossible to believe that he was as ready for everything that came onto his shoulders. Like the idea that somehow LeBron James exceeded expectation is just crazy because the expectations were so ridiculously high. But I remember many years ago, I think it might have been when they first started the shop, and he talked about how basically he hadn't considered what a burden it would be to put his name on his son, like to name his son LeBron James Jr. and what that would mean. And he didn't think about that. He was just proud and he went from there, but he didn't really think that much about what that would mean. And there's a real pressure that comes from being his son. And, you know, LeBron then talked about how, well, if a team wants to sign me in free agency, then you pick up my son and all of this stuff. And that's how you make me want to go there. And I have questioned, and those of you who listen to me here know this, I've said for the longest, I'm like, one, I don't know if Bronny is an NBA player, but two, I don't know if that's good for Bronny, right? Like the question is whether or not this is good for Bronny. Got you. Then LeBron did a presser where he said something to the effect of, just because it's my dream to play with my son doesn't mean that that's Bronny's dream. And I really thought that that was a cool bit of self-reflection. You know what I mean? Like in that moment to recognize, like, look, you got this thing you want. Like we all seen all the episodes of the sitcoms about that where blanking sons, whatever, a little plumber or whatever, you know what I'm saying? And the son actually want to be an accountant or whatever it is, right? And so for him to be able to take that pause and look back and be like, yeah, you know, maybe that's not what it is. I thought that that took a remarkable level of maturity. And I thought that was a good look for him. But you start listening to what people are saying. The plan is for Bronny. And I think it was Woj, I think I'd seen, who'd done a report where they expect Bronny to be on the roster early in the season And then he goes down to the G League, where, I mean, maybe he needs to be the whole time. I don't know. But if he needs to be in the G League, why would he need to be on the roster at the beginning of the season? Right? Is it just so we can get a contrived moment of father and son on the basketball court at one time? Like, is that just what it is?